Can you see me?
See you, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. I'll do my safer.
I found that quote that I told you about last time.
What quote is that?
I'll read it to you. It's from a book called The World That Was Lithuania.
Okay.
And it says, the story is told in Mussar circles that at a convention of German university deans to discuss curriculum, a professor rose and said, quote, there is one area of knowledge that is studied in only one institution in the world, in a small Russian town named Kelm. That subject is the correcting of man's character traits.
Okay.
That's the quote.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yes. All right. Okay, people listen to our first session and they liked it very much. So
yeah, I listened to it also. So just for Chazara.
Okay. Where we get up to here?
Maybe Vihine Osios Ra'avu
Osios Bar, yeah. Okay. Vihine Osios Ra'avu Bar, person who being hungry and being foolish. Achasen. Hayitochen shal yom echad yidag, v'netzach netzachim shelo yichye, lo yemim mezei rav l'chumei reshev lo yidag. Is it possible a person for one day, in other words, says that somebody who has what to eat today and says, what am I going to eat tomorrow, is considered to be talak emunah, right? But but even more so, a person is only generally concerned with the hunger of his stomach. He's not concerned with his eternal satisfaction, that he shouldn't end up be from those who are Mzeirav and Chumei Reshev, those who are cursed, and I'm assuming it means the world to come, because of their lack of concern for it. If a person lacks that, it's because he doesn't use his power of imagery. He should work on getting that power of tzir. There's an interesting book from the PSS, the Rebbe, the Chos HaTalmidim. It's called the sequel. It's called Hachsharas Avrechim. And Hachsharas Avrechim, he gives samples of mental exercise of this sort, using depictions and meditation and all that kind of stuff. And he has two examples, which he gives in great detail. And he says, you can't do them both in one day because they're antithetical. The first one is imagining yourself coming out of Mitzrayim. And, he draws lots and lots of word pictures, which you can image in your mind and think about Yetzias Mitzrayim and experience it that way. And the next one is about experiencing the day of death and how you're going to sink down in illness and in pain, gradually descending towards your grave. So he says that they're antithetical. If you do them one day, it might be damaging, but the idea is something which you don't find very often, neither by Misnagdim nor by Hasidim. This idea of koach hatzior is a very, very important one. That a person should be able to depict in his mind's eyes what is important and what's significant by visualizing it. Now, it happens to be that I'm not very good at visualization. I always say that since I'm half Yeka and half Litvak, I'm emotionally crippled. So I can't really deal with these types of things. I remember I was in college and taking an advanced course in counseling, and the professor brought in a phonograph with meditation on being on a beach, and other people in the class were able to image themselves, even feel themselves with sand between their toes or the sun beating on their face. I thought they're all crazy. I couldn't visualize anything whatsoever. So a few years ago, one of my students in Or Sameach, he says, "No, you can't visualize. I'll show you that you can visualize." He said, "Look at this person. sitting in the room, ask him to leave the room. And can you imagine him sitting in the seat after he left? And I could. I realized then it's not as difficult as people say it is, but it's still something which I find difficult to force myself to do. Sometimes when I really want to have kavanah during davening, which is unfortunately not so often, but sometimes I visualize the words in my mind. And again, that's something which I thought I could never do. But then once he proved to me that it can be done, it's relatively simple. But even that for me, takes especially effort of a concentration, I guess because of my ADD, whatever it is, to focus on that picture. But that is that's what he's about to say, that nosi bolim chavero means you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes requires koach hatzir. That's what it says now. V'nei motzinim b'Moshe Rabbeinu lo b'shalom, b'parashat Shmos, v'yidam Moshe b'gomer, he grew older, v'yar b'siv l'som, and he saw the sufferings of the Jewish people. Uperish Rashi, nasan einav libo lios meitzer aleihem. He placed his eyes and his heart to focus on their anguish, the anguish with them. Perush, what does it mean? Hirgil atzmo b'tzior, he put himself in a mindset where he visualized to himself, Hilkaralo Zos, as if this happened to him. And that's why he went to see. The power of imagery comes from bringing one's senses close to a similar occurrence, or close to what's going on. It's hard to visualize fire unless you're standing next to a hot stove. That's actually what we saw Salanter said when Chazal say that Gehenna is 1/60th of the fire of this world is 1/60th of Gehenna. Is they're giving you a tool to use in order to depict what the fire of Gehenna, which is symbolic, actually would be if translated pain in this world. It says, imagine you put one finger on a stove, hot stove, and you left it there for not a second, and jumped up, but 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and then don't go on, then only after you've done it for a while with the first finger, go on to the second finger and start imagining that, and then go on to the third finger. And that way, gradually you'll get an idea of what the shame and pain of Gehenna is from your understanding of pain in this world. And so that's what Chazal gave it to us. He says, not because that's what it's like, but because it gives us some idea of what the spiritual pain will be like. So if you've never touched a hot stove, you won't be able to do that. But if you're in the vicinity of a hot stove, or you're touching one right now, then you certainly would be able to do it quite well. So he wanted to file away in his mind, in order to do this, the actual scenario of the Egyptians afflicting the Jews. And he said he so much involved himself, became habituated to seeing these depictions, to the point that he felt their pain, as if he himself was in this anguish. And that means that he shared the burden with them more from his more as a result of his own anguish. Somehow he was able to extrapolate from that, from individual picture of individual anguish, the picture of the general anguish, and especially when we're dealing with his brethren. It's actually talking about Kodesh Baruch Hu, that in all their anguish, he has anguish. And from this, it came out eventually, Moshe Rabbeinu crossed boundaries. And he said, said to God, why did you do bad stuff to this nation? It was excused because he experienced it on himself on account of his nosei bolim chavero. So the truth is that this is, in fact, like I just said, it was really very severe. It was like, this is worse than the sin of Mei Meriva, because Mei Meriva, he didn't question God. He slipped up. He questioned God. Livgor b'Moshe. At that time, the aspect of judgment wanted to them to hurt Moshe because of his chutzpah. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu anichulo, leave him alone. Shu covered Yisrael diber. He spoke for the honor of the Jewish people, and therefore it's understandable, it's excusable. This is what we meant. Keep Moshe Rabbeinu Hashem Lasani and Avlibo. He put his heart and his eyes and his heart. Yos mitzir, to have anguish, the tzaron shel Yisrael, in the anguish of the Jewish people. Much because of Rashi's Al Shem Parashat Shmos, Perush Einov, Hainu is bonus asekel. Einov means with understanding, looking at it with his mind. V'libo, and his heart, Hainu lashiv el halev. That's to put into the heart. Now, it happens to be, in my opinion, and one of the reasons we have difficulty doing this one nowadays is because of television. How so? Because even in the days when people read books, they had to conjure in their minds the dialogue and the setting. In the days when people listen to radio, at least they had to conjure in their minds the settings. In the days of television, nobody has to conjure anything because they give you the images and they give you the dialogue. So therefore, we have become less adept at doing things which in earlier generations were considered to be an obvious part of reading and thinking. It's not expected of us anymore. And I think that there is a plus side to it, when sometimes, although usually not, the video is used to provoke certain loftier feelings. That's usually not the case, but that would be a way of using this medium for that purpose. Unfortunately, again, like everything else, it detracts. The more technology we have, the more it detracts from our actual skills. It's like the memory. Once a printing press was invented, people's memory started diminishing. Once computers were developed, they diminished even more. But that's the problem with technology. It has an advantage. It makes certain things more accessible, but it makes this capacity to be mitzayer things not as successful. If you have a really good novel, still you can do it. I think that was the allure of Harry Potter even before the movies for kids. For me too, I enjoyed the series because it puts you into, you could create those scenarios in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but so it's these bonus aseichel. That's the depicting with one's mind's eye what's going on. Libo, to put it in one's heart. Shargish libo b'tzaram, that you should feel their anguish. Kiluhu batzmo b'tzara, as if you yourself are in this anguish. Like it says, it means that you have to know, but that's not enough. Yediyah is one level. Hashibosel b'avecha is a whole different level, because we can know things and not be impacted emotionally by them. That's only half the way, less than half the way. The main thing, is the impact on the heart. So Yediyah is the beginning, it's not nowhere near the end. But after you feel the anguish, then you have a lot of anguish, on the anguish of the divine presence. Like Amru, like they say, I'm not sure, usually it's on Tzar Shechina, which is a very big thing in Kabbalah. Really, a person is supposed to daven that the goal should end, so the Shechina should not be B'tzar. And that means that the divine presence, which wants to be present among us, is incapable of being present among us as long as we remain in Golus. And therefore, we should want to be extracted from Golus to give a nachas ruach to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, of course, it's good for other entities as well, for Am Yisrael, for the world, but all of that should be included in the idea of Tzara Shechina, because what's best for the world is having that proximity to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that will Mimela have an impact on all the other issues of the world. So, and we know the Shekhinah has the same attitude towards us, because Gemara says, the Shosh Hadam Shari B'tzar, when a person is involved in anguish, Shekhinah Ma Omeres, What does the divine presence say? Kolani miroshi, kolani mizroi. They've tortured me on my head. They tortured me on my arm. Matzina by Parshas das Chalna, and we find in this parsha we've begun to speak about. It's appropriate for us lichtov ma'amar hanichbad hazeh. I'm sorry, that's not called ma'amar nichbad hazeh. Parshas Mishpatim. So here he's saying, oh, never mind. He's saying, when I started writing this, we're in Parshas Mishpatim. And this is what it says in Parshas Mishpatim. Vayuv Gomer, this is the most difficult pasuk in all of Chumash, in my opinion. It says that the elders of Israel saw the God of Israel, and under his feet, Kamasel Livnasas appear, something like the whiteness of, I guess, a sapphire of some sort, and it was like the essence of the heavens in its purity. So it's very difficult to understand what exactly they were seeing. But this is the way he's going to take it is not to try and understand it Kabbalistically, intellectually, but from a Mussar perspective, which is much easier. And we already wrote about how you can look into this, and it creates an awesome impact to speak about. I can't even say it out loud. I can just write it. Pasuk says the whiteness of the sapphire, but it was a brick. Livnas also means the levena, right? Levena is a brick. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the brick in front of him in order to remember the anguish of Klal Yisrael. So we see how great the actions of mitzvahs are in this world. To the point that, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mishtamish le'olam ha'maaseh b'shvil Yisrael, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses the world of maaseh, because he created, obviously this was a figure that people could see. It said HaKadosh Baruch Hu depicts it for himself to teach us what that we should do the depicting, whatever is necessary for ourselves. He made us to remember the anguish. Of course, God doesn't need to have a reminder. But everything that Hashem does is to teach us. How much more significant it is when you put something into the world of action and practice. Obviously, Hashem doesn't put on tefillin. But telling us that practice is an important thing. They say that, you can have different levels of practice. They say the Reb Chatzkel Levenstein was a Talmud of Kelm. He actually, when he wanted to depict Kriyas Yamsuf for himself, he would take the stenders in the base medrash, put them next to each other, and then walk between them, pulling them apart. Now, I don't know for us that they would have much of an impact, unless it was the Ten Commandments and they pushed the button and the border split. But obviously for Reb Chatzkel, that was something which made Kriyas Yamsuf more of an Olam HaMaaseh thing, something which gave him a tangibility for that. Now let's add something more astounding. It's known the statement of the wise man, and wise man, I don't know which one it is, not Jewish, but a wise saying. This is certainly true. Anguish and pleasure are intertwined with each other. There's no such thing, as Reb Noach Weinberg says. You ask an American, what's the opposite of pleasure? So American will say the opposite of pleasure is pain. That's not true. The opposite of pleasure is lack of pleasure. Most pleasures require pain. So if you want to have a child or a pet, there's a lot of pain in having a child or a pet. Yet without that pain, you won't have the pleasure. So the absence of pleasure is not the opposite of pleasure is absence of pleasure. But since Americans are so decadent, we think the absence of pleasure is pain, but that's not really thinking it through at all. So that's what he says. You want to have pleasure, like we say in Pigov, it's the fum tzaragra. The reward is in proportion to the amount of anguish which goes into it. After the anguish, the pain which goes in, when the pleasure comes, the pleasure is much greater. Much more than if he hadn't had the anguish previously. So when they saw that, okay, things were now pristine like the heaven, their purity, that's when they're ready, were redeemed. So why do they have to see the brick of sapphire to remember their toil in Mitzrayim? It seems that it was what Kosh Baruch was trying to teach us was in contradistinction to the Etzem Shemayim L'Torah, L'Agdil, to amplify, Kivyochol, so to speak, Hasimcha Zen Neged Zen. In other words, the more you realize the anguish which went into it, the greater the accomplishment, the greater the simcha. Actually, it's about again, Hashem doesn't need this. But to reveal his love for his unique nation, the nation he chose for himself, and also to tell people as individuals, that we, after each, are obligated to bear the burden with our friend. Only a person who went through the anguish with their friend can actually have true simcha when they rejoice. I see that I have a few students over the years who've said to me that publicly and privately that they would not be observant today if not for me. And that's the greatest reward from being a teacher. And but there are many years of pain and anguish which had to go into that effort until we actually came up with that outcome, and not always we successful. But that's the accomplishment is magnified by the involvement, and this is certainly true about any Nosta B'Olam Chavero. If you want to have simcha in their simcha, you have to have the yogon and tsar in their tsar and yogon. You can't separate the two. So Zeha flavor fella. This is an astonishing thing, but this is the case, true. Shem Yazerli Kanes B'Mala Nora Ozu. Hashem allow us to enter this great level. Amen. Keni Ratzon. Asher Keni V'Arei. But now with this we can explain very well. Ma'amar Zal Albert Kanei Rachel B'Achlosa. Rachel was jealous of her sister. Tzadikim Ma'apchim Midas Adin Midas Rachamim. So the tzadikim change the measure of judgment to the measure of mercy. Perush, meaning, Siv Ayotza Yachli Bam Mavina Kol Ma'aseim. God creates together all their hearts, and He understands all their deeds. What does it mean, all their deeds? But Beitman explained this is what makes sense. After we've explained, so to speak, Kodesh Baruch Hu uses tangible reminders, tangible siyurim for the world, to relate to the world of tangibility. And Mikoshkin certainly she'adonim es ha'adam, when they judge a person, yavilu f'nabes kol ha'masim yacha, bring all his deeds together. Yavilu ma'aseh echad, there'll be one deed which he did, yivarer ma'aseh hasheni, and it's going to clarify why he did another deed. V'chadoim, etc. Yesh mishi vatel me'atorah. There's somebody, people are going to say, okay, sure I was mevatel Torah. It says, I have a good excuse. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't allowed to put myself in danger. In opposition, they bring a different thing he did in this world. Which he toiled much more. What's the concern with his health so much? So the second deed, indicates concerning the first one, that it was Einza Rak Atzlus is only laziness, Mifim Yadayim, and weakness, Ba'avam B'tul Torah in the matter of not learning. Or Misha Ain't knows that it's stalker kid the boy the so he doesn't give stalker like he should. But Misha Roshai says he now can't because he has tremendous debts. No, and he has to watch his funds before to pay back his debts. They bring another deed, where he spent money for his own honor. Was not concerned. There are so many examples, more than we can tell. We should get caught in that. So now, what does it mean that Rishonim changed the Midas Arachamim to Din? Perish Kavanah so means Shesover L'Shem Shamayim. A person thinks he's doing something L'Shem Shamayim for the sake of heaven. Yavo Maaseh Acher, another deed will come, Yivarer HaSheker Shel Maaseh Rishon, and show that he was not doing L'Shem Shamayim at all. He's doing for his own self-aggrandizement, his own arrogance, his own pride, his own competitive nature. So what looks like Rachamim, there was, for example, somebody just a wild example. Somebody gives $50,000 to get their name on a building, not because they really want to see the building built, because they want the plaque. So that person would be a person who's saying that he was L'Shem Shamayim, but in fact, we'll bring you other deeds in which we'll show you, no. You did lots of stuff for your own pride. This also you did for your own pride, not because you were sincere about it. Now, of course, there's always kinds of mitosh lishma b'lishma, but it has to be realized that what strive to come from the shlo lishma to lishma. So So in that case, he's going to be punished on both of them. So tzaddikim, they do things which also seem to be bad. But Rachel was jealous of Leah's children. Looked like a bad trait of jealousy. So, but they bring on high when they judge her. They bring opposite this jealousy, which seems low. The older story, where she restrained her own desire to be married to Yaakov, Tzaddik, and gave the signs over to her sister so Yaakov could be tricked that night. So it shows that it's not because of a regular run-of-the-mill jealousy. It must have been that there was some sort of jealousy which was l'shem shamayim. Sofrim means when two people are jealous of each other, that they want to emulate each other's accomplishments, opposed to jealous of each other, that they want to bring other people down. So that's Kina Sofrim says, Tarba Chochmo increases wisdom because people are trying to emulate each other as opposed to competing with each other. So that's what I want to say. He wants to say here about Rachel, that since we see how much she was willing to forego for the honor of her sister, it must not have been a simple kina. It must have been that the good deeds of her sister, midas adin, the rachamim, that's what changed the midas adin to a midas haracham. Okay, I think we'll stop here for tonight.
Very good. Thank you very much, Rav Yosef.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Okay.
My pleasure.
See you next week.
Okay, take care.